Hey everyone. If any of you watched Worldscope on the 12th of July, you would have seen our discussion on Biden, Trump, Harris, the state of politics in the US, and the impact the full moon on the 21st of July at 29 Capricorn might have. I.e., we said it would be a pivotal point for Biden. And sure enough, he stepped out of the running on the day of the full moon. And after that, Kamala Harris was nominated as Democratic leader nominee. Also, the day after Worldscope, Trump survived the assassination attempt on the 13th of July. Absolutely the day after that, I said someone might try to do something to him. So I decided to have a very quick look at Kamala Harris and what the future might hold running up into the elections and beyond. I'm not going to pick these charts apart in minute detail. I just want to pull out some key themes that describe what might be ahead, particularly from or through the lens of some goddess archetypes. If my schedule allows, over the next few weeks and months, I will explore some other potential candidates too. So watch this space. But for now, if you find this video helpful, please like and subscribe. So I'm just going to share my screen, get some charts up to talk about. There we go. So Kamala Harris, Rise of the Feminine, and you'll see why I've given that title as we go along. So Kamala's chart very much resonated with that full moon on the 21st of July because it formed a T-square with her natal sun moon opposition, full of incredible cardinal energy. And the moon fell in her eighth house. So I think it shows a deep commitment to the process. Anyone familiar with the US Sibley chart will know that that moon fell on the Sibley's US Pluto, triggering its current Pluto return, which is still ongoing. And that means Kamala's natal sun moon opposition forms a cardinal T-square with the Sibley Pluto too. So she will be very proactive in the evolution of the US, I believe. That full moon, it was anaretic on that last degree of Capricorn, and it rules the Cancer sun, of course. The sun represents leaders, doesn't it? But the moon was also out of bounds along with Ceres. So we've got some powerful feminine energy there with no restraint, quite maverick energy being out of bounds. But the important thing for that full moon, it was conjunct Pluto on 0 degrees of Aquarius. So very much powerful energy for change. Pluto has one foot in the future in Aquarius, but was looking back and moving back towards that anaretic moon, which in Capricorn is still in the past, bringing focus to all those Pluto and Capricorn themes we've lived through recently, highlighting, everything we must leave behind, everything that's old and worn out. With that moon anaretic, particularly, there might be some fear about moving into the future and bringing change into our lives, personally and collectively. But it's cardinal, so about initiating change. But on that last degree, there can be a sense of urgency. It feels like the last chance. We've got to get this done as soon as possible. I've got to act now. And with Pluto there, perhaps feeling compelled or forced to act. And we've seen this with Biden stepping aside, of course. We also had the Mars-Uranus Algol conjunction, which was exact on the 15th of July at 26 Taurus, falling on Kamala's natal Jupiter. So again, about chopping away the past, cutting off the old and moving forcibly into the future, the power of change. Note that was also picking up a square to her natal Saturn up there close to the midheaven. So her feminine power is strong. She's got a Earth trine of Ceres and Lilith, with Haumea down there on her IC. Also Juno in Sagittarius. You can see my cursor moving over that now. Perfect for someone working as a lawyer or having a legal career. Transit Mars is going to oppose that Juno and square Haumea around the 28th of July. And it will also form an inconjunct with Ceres. So it'll be interesting to watch that period over the next few days. And that's forming an immutable T-square. So she's going to need all her adaptive skills as she steps into that powerful matriarchal feminine role, moving forward into a power, and of course the challenge that she will no doubt face with that. So here's the chart of Kamala's natal in the center with the 2024 Aries ingress around the outside. I've spoken at length about the feminine power of that Aries ingress. It had an out of bounds Leo moon opposite Aquarius Pluto, with the matriarch of creative power, Haumea, forming a T-square. Haumea was the apex to that T-square. And that's picking up some long-term squares between Pluto and Haumea that we're going to have this decade, and I'll come to that later. So we're going to see women in positions of power really coming to the forefront, as well as female rights, especially around reproductive rights. And we can see Kamala's Aries moon there. You know, she's a she-wolf, resonating with the go-getting, inspirational fire of a female leader. But she has that lovely Libra sun opposite, offering some balance. And of course, attracting division, as full moon people often do. But what is incredibly striking is that transit Haumea is exactly conjunct her natal Mercury at the moment, pulling into all that powerful feminine energy of that Aries ingress with the Leo moon opposite Pluto. And she's, in fact, as I said, picking up that long-term Pluto-Haumea square we have through the rest of the decade. So expect her to bring much vocal power around reproductive rights, a topic that might be the fall of Trump and the more right-wing candidates. No one is more placed to discuss the rights around women's bodies than a woman herself. So here we have a volcano of power ready to erupt, perhaps a volcano of feminine votes, fighting for change against the backdrop of patriarchal control that Pluto and Capricorn has thrown into the spotlight. So she may well be a force for societal change. In the ingress, there's also transit Mars on her natal Saturn there in Aquarius. Transit Venus and Saturn are very close to her natal Chiron. Across the Pisces Virgo axes, which is picking up her natal Venus as well, sitting there next to Uranus and Pluto. So that could well be about taking responsibility for not only a collective wound, but collective health. And speaking of reproductive rights, let's look at how she resonates with Roe versus Wade, a key topic in the election. So, of course, Roe versus Wade was the decision of the US Supreme Court in 1973 that protected the right to abortion. It was overruled in 2022, which coincided with the second exactment of the Pluto-Haumea square at 27 Libra. We can see the first few exactments, the degrees they fall on here. There's 13 in all, but I couldn't fit them all in. But we can see the second one there certainly fell in line with Roe versus Wade being overturned. And of course, that's picking up the US Pluto return and Kamala's Sun Moon opposition too. But what we have here when we look at the Roe versus Wade chart against Kamala, her Juno picks up the Roe versus Wade Juno beautifully in the Roe versus Wade 9th house. That's about people's rights. Here it's in Sagittarius, it's about legal rights, it's in the 9th. And the Roe versus Wade is about the legal right to abortion. And Kamala is perfectly suited to this with her legal background, of course. We also see Black Moon Lilith there next to, take that arrow away, Black Moon Lilith sat close to Roe versus Wade Juno, along with Neptune and Ceres. Okay, they're in the 8th house of the Roe versus Wade chart and very much describe the themes of womanhood and motherhood and the sacrifices sometimes made when there's no alternative. These planets form a T-square with Kamala's Haumea, the goddess of fertility and creative power, goddess of destruction as well, of course. You know, Haumea is a double-edged sword. And note Kamala's stellium of Venus, Uranus, and Pluto falling very close to the Roe versus Wade moon and Hawaii, very much pulling in a strong feminine principle, especially around health, with it being in Virgo. And this is also trying the Roe versus Wade Capricorn stellium there, okay, which includes Venus, the North Node, Jupiter, and Mercury. We see Kamala's sun quite close there to the Roe versus Wade Uranus. This was groundbreaking legislation at the time. So I think she may well be identified with this going forward. In her Mercury, next to her natal sun there, recall that currently has transit Haumea conjunct it. And this is falling square to the Roe versus Wade Sun and Mercury. So we've got echoing themes going on there. So I think she may well be caught up in the challenge regarding this. For any of you, again, familiar with the Sibley chart, we know as well that Kamala's Saturn falls on top of the US Sibley moon. So that could be more evidence of her as a powerful figure for the feminine principle. Equally, it could perhaps suggest some disconnect from the public mood as well, but certainly it ties her into feminine themes without a doubt. We know she's an open advocate for abortion rights, and that is going to be a hot topic in the US elections, as I've already said. But we can go even deeper than Roe versus Wade. We can go even further back than that. So essentially, when abortion was criminalized back in 1864, that was the Howell Code. Okay, just move that there. And of course, then Roe versus Wade in 1973 came away and overruled that. And Kamala's chart again resonates very strongly with it. So we'll have a very brief overview. Again, I'm not going into minute detail. Again, we can see her Juno there falls quite close to the Howell Jupiter. Okay. Again, we're talking about legal rights that she may well fight for. And that's picking up her natal square, of course, to Haumea there. All right. In fact, that whole Virgo stellium, and that Virgo stellium picks up Howell's Black Moon Lilith, which, let's face it, is about the demonization of women choosing abortion in this chart. So the Haumea Saturn opposition, which you can see there across the middle of the chart there, across the 3rd and 9th, that very much describes the legislation blocking women's reproductive rights. But just look at how that picks up Kamala's Sun-Moon opposition as well in that outer wheel there, falling right across that opposition. And it, you know, particularly resonant around reproductive rights and feminine rights and fertility. This her moon falling on that Haumea. Again, just that the feminine themes are so strong. So I think she may well force change regarding reproductive rights, but of course, with her full moon, she's going to bring challenge as well, or face challenge. And, you know, whatever change she brings, it's likely to be divisive. There's so much more in this chart, but I do want to move on and take a quick look at Kamala's forecast as well. So I'm not always convinced by looking at the results of election day. So I think it can be more useful sometimes to look at the inauguration day for a more informed view of who might be placed in the White House. So let's look at that particular date for Kamala. So this is the tri-wheel of Kamala in the very center. In the middle, we have her progressions and then the transits for inauguration day, which I've set for 12 o'clock, which seems to be a given time for inauguration. A few things jump out for me. All right. So we have transit Juno at the time of inauguration, right opposite her natal Jupiter there. That could be a binding legal agreement. And it falls across the 6/12 axes, describing a pledge, a duty to serve, to protect and work for the collective. This forms a wider T-square with her natal Saturn there, very close to her midheaven. And of course, we've also got transit Uranus hanging about that Juno Jupiter opposition as well, bringing about progression and change. But she has progressed Mercury on her descendant, applying to her natal nodal axes. This is very important because Mercury is her natal ruler. We can see she has Gemini rising. So this is a pivotal point in her life, without a doubt. We also have progressed Juno conjunct natal Sun there, which is absolutely beautiful for a matriarchal figure in a position of power. You should be able to see my cursor over that Sun Juno there. And we also have transit Neptune moving away from her Virgo stellium, but it's in her 10th house, and it's very much about a collective duty, I think. But close to that, and actually opposite her natal Venus there, we have transit Venus and transit Saturn. So very much about a collective duty, a collective responsibility, perhaps. And this also picks up a trine to her progressed moon there in Cancer. So a collective mother figure emerging, perhaps. We'll see. And then finally, we have transit moon. We can see it there. And it's sat in between Maki, the planet of change and shock and radical progression. We've also got black moon Lilith there. The moon is moving to that black moon Lilith. So, and that's opposite transit Chiron there. Okay, so I wonder if this suggests acknowledgement of the demonization of women, particularly about around abortion, but also the collective power and how she might be a mentor moving forward with this, perhaps. We can see Black Moon Lilith there is actually forming a trine with her natal ascendant. You know, and I've spoken about challenges she may face in the run-up to the elections and beyond. You know, whether or not she's elected, she will face challenge, and there will be some quarters wanting to demonize Harris for sure. So there's a whole lot more here, of course, and I could easily spend 2 hours just on this tri-wheel alone, but there's much that looks favorable for Kamala around the inauguration time, particularly from the feminine perspective. And this is echoed in her solar arc directions and solar return for 2024. So we'll start with her solar arc directions. Okay. She's had a lot of solar arc direction energy over the past 2 or 3 years. On first glance, looks like she's got a huge amount going on right now, but please take into account we're looking for directions with aspects of 1 degree or less. All right, so it's the next 12-month period that I'm focusing my attention on here. So we can see Black Moon Lilith there. Directed Lilith applying to her MC. This is someone who won't conform, someone who won't take any prisoners. This will be all or nothing, but with a collective slant to it, doing something for the collective, helping those less fortunate or the underdogs, that type of thing. This is echoed by solar arc Mercury on top of her natal Black Moon Lilith. Okay, becoming that matriarchal voice, you know, speaking out for those who are demonized, fighting out and refusing to conform or refusing to submit. I think we might see some strong speeches coming up from Kamala. Okay. I generally only use solar arc directions. I sort of use the hard aspects, but here I couldn't help but ignore some softer aspects. So we have directed Uranus. We can see that there, and that is trine natal Venus. Okay, sorry, I didn't make my arrow quite long enough there. And we have a solar arc sun there, and that's trine natal moon, which has solar arc north node building into a trine. So all this is going to sort of be, you know, that solar arc ascendant and solar arc north node is going to be applying and exacting with that moon over the next sort of couple of years. So there's a lovely inspirational grand fire trine formed here between the natal and some of those solar arcs. Not marked up on this particular chart, so I'll just use my cursor. We have solar arc Juno there, which is forming an opposition to natal Maki. This is key, you know, to being involved in ultra progressive rights going forward, without a doubt, particularly from a feminine principle. So finally, we have Kamala's solar return for 2024. Okay, look at that Venus rising. You know, she has an October birthday, so her solar return will be coming into effect in the next few weeks, exacting in 2024, and that will describe the energy going forward for the next year, right through into October 2025. That Venus rising is very important because Venus rules her natal sun, and it rules her natal Jupiter. And here we have Jupiter ruling this solar return. So there's kind of mutual reception going on here between the natal and the solar return. Okay. But the solar return has this huge stellium running across the 10th and 11th house, which it's in Libra. It's ruled by that rising Venus there. And just look at that Sun-Juno conjunction, which echoes the solar arc conjunction that we saw as well, or the progressed conjunction. Sorry, I apologize. So, you know, this sits in the sort of 10th, 11th, the social connections and legislative government. And the sun's falling in a succeedent house. So she's going to be building and fortifying on something. And we have Black Moon Lilith there falling on top of Maki with the South Node not too far away. This is potentially groundbreaking as a step forward in the progression of society. You know, she'd be the first female US president, but also the first of color. So it would certainly be groundbreaking if she were to succeed at the elections and then be inaugurated. But this stellium, particularly, you know, Juno and the sun, forms a beautiful air trine to Jupiter, and more widely Moon in the 7th house of the solar return there. And of huge importance is an angular Saturn sat down there, very close to the Pisces IC, which perhaps describes, you know, she might well be sort of starting to live with a collective responsibility. And if we compare the solar return to the natal, I'm a huge fan of doing that. It gives us so much more insight than just looking at solar returns as standalones, which of course do have their own value. We can see that rising Venus falls very close to her natal Juno. All right. The solar return Juno and Sun form a grand trine, a lovely grand air trine with natal Saturn and her ascendant and north node there. Okay, so communication for sure is going to be a huge feature for her. So yeah, let's hope she steps up to the mark with the speeches she's going to be given over the next few weeks and months and onwards beyond that, hopefully. And if we look at that all-important solar return, Saturn, you know, important because it's angular on the IC, that's picking up her natal Venus, sorry, Virgo, Pisces opposition there across her 4th and 10th. And of course, her natal Venus is tied into that generational collective aspect. So whether or not she's inaugurated, there's much here that's favourable. Particularly for being a powerful spokesperson for change going forward, especially regarding female rights. And I'm going to continue looking deeper as the election process gathers further momentum. So thank you. I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope it's provided some insight into Kamala's astrology as of now. It's been an incredibly brief overview, but one that has some quite powerful statements, particularly around all those feminine archetypes. You know, and with that Aries ingress, with that Haumea Moon Pluto T square, the rise of the feminine is going to be a huge theme going forward. So hopefully I'll have time, my schedule allowing, to use some other key players of the fight for the White House. But for now, and aside from just the US, keep watching for prominent female figures in the news, both the positive and the negative, but they're going to be in the news for sure more and more. Thank you. Bye-bye.